Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
I had a bunch of people send me this story over a period of time. I didn't keep track of everybody. I apologize, but it was an interesting case from the Independent, the UK newspaper. I purposely got that because I wanted to see once in a while how these stories look to people across the pond, as they say. And there are quite a few people who watch my channel who are from over there. So this is from the UK Independent. Man charged over wife's death after he stopped her driving drunk and she was hit by a car. So that's the general outline of the story. The man and the woman were at some place together. He says she was drunk. He didn't want her to drive, and therefore he took her keys from her. That's part of the story. And then she then started walking home and got hit by a car, and they've now charged him with murder. So Gino Spoccia wrote this story. An Alabama man has reportedly sued a police department for arresting him after stopping his allegedly drunk wife who was hit by a motorist from driving home. The man's 42 years old. He's charged with manslaughter over his wife's death in August of 2018. She was walking along the northbound shoulder of Highway 31 when she was fatally hit. She had wanted to drive home, but Mr. Todd refused to allow it, as reported by AL.com. Now, police in Canton, Alabama, accused him of throwing away her keys following an argument in front of Friends Steakhouse in Clanton, Alabama. And so they used that as evidence to support their manslaughter charge against him. Now, his lawsuit, which was filed against the police department there, says surveillance footage from the steakhouse parking lot shows both the husband and wife searching for something in the car. He says he didn't throw the keys away, and therefore he did not force his wife to walk home along Highway 31. By the way, she's 35 years old, and he is 42 years old. And many news stories do that. They insert the age for some reason. There you go. Her keys later were found near Friend's Steakhouse, but about throwing distance. And where, according to AL.com, Mr. Todd was performing with his band that night. They do not tell us what instrument he plays, which many people in my audience would like to know, because they will tell you if this is the bassist, that's one thing. If it's the lead guitarist, that's another. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just move on. His lawsuit also says that investigators interrogated him and continuously berated and screamed at him, trying to guilt him into confessing to something he didn't do. I've never seen someone actually file a lawsuit against a police department specifically for the interrogation techniques, because what he's describing here, of course, screaming is subjective, but the fact that they berated him and spoke to him in a higher volume voice and tried to guilt him into confessing is pretty much plan A in every police interrogation. Well, actually, it might be plan B. Plan A is, did you do it? We saw you do it. We know you did it. Okay, that didn't work. Raise the volume, start berating him. That allegedly included forcing him to look at images of the crash site. Now, if my wife had died and I wasn't there, and they said, by the way, Mr. Lehto, your wife has passed away. She got hit by a car, I would want to see images of the crash site. I would think that's part of what you'd want out of just natural curiosity and just human nature. I mean, you don't want to see that stuff? I don't know. So a CPD officer is the last remaining defendant named in the lawsuit after a U.S. district judge dismissed another officer and the city from the lawsuit back in April. He is accused of lacking a probable cause when charging the man and faces charges of malicious prosecution, according to court records seen by the news website. Now, he has denied those charges, and the Independent could not reach him for comment. A jury selection for the trial against Mr. Hicks is reportedly scheduled for February 27th, 2023. And it's unclear here what happened to those charges, because it starts off with the man charged after he stopped her driving drunk and she was hit by a car. And he has now sued the police department for arresting him. And he, it says here, was charged with a crime. but there's no mention made of the prosecution proceeding beyond that. So I'm wondering if perhaps the charges were dropped, and if that's the case, well, the man's filed a lawsuit, and he's got one defendant left, and he's pursuing that. We'll see what happens. But I guess the real question is, if you were a police officer, a law enforcement official of some sort, and you were confronted with the facts before anybody told you any theories of how it'd be prosecuted, and you just said, hey, there's a man and a woman in a parking lot of a bar, and we believe they got into an argument because the woman was drunk and was going to leave, and to leave, she was going to drive her car. The husband took her keys away and either hid them or tossed them or did something with them so where she had no keys. So she couldn't drive home, so she started walking home. And she's walking home and she's drunk and she got hit by a car. Is there a crime here? And by the way, questions like that are what you get in law school. That's what a law school exam question might look like. And it would say discuss this at common law or discuss this with the law of your state, or it depends on what school you're in and so on. But they say discuss, what crimes are there? And the question then becomes, what did the guy do? Well, he took her keys away from her, right? Did he force her to walk home? Could she have walked in the bar and called a friend? Could she have walked in the bar and said, hey guys, I'm a woman, I need a ride home. Anybody want to give a woman a ride home? I suspect there were a variety of ways that she could have gotten home from there if she had chosen to do so. But then the fact that she chose to walk home is simply one of the choices that she had before her. Now, the next question is, we don't know how she got hit by the car other than the fact that she was in fact hit by a car. So was she on the shoulder of the road walking in the correct direction? Because remember, in most states, pedestrians, if they're on the roadway, have got to stay off the road if they can and be walking in the direction of traffic, towards traffic that's coming towards them, so that they can see the vehicles coming at them as opposed to vehicles coming up behind you. Was she walking on the correct side of the road? Was she off the road? Because if she's off the road on the shoulder somewhere and a car comes by and hits her, is that the guy's fault back at the bar? Or would that be the fault of the driver who, for some odd reason, is driving down the shoulder of the road, running people over? And so there are some questions that we don't know the answers to here. And as I like to point out, I wasn't there. I doubt that you were there. So we have to speculate a little bit, but simply ask these questions. And so given the facts of what we do know, that is man, woman at bar, man takes keys from woman, let's assume that's true. Woman walking home from bar gets hit by a car. Someone's going to be charged with a crime here. Who is that? My first guess would be the person in the car who hit somebody. Because generally speaking, in a situation like that where someone's walking along the road, if they get hit by a car, it's the car that did something wrong. Unless she's walking down the middle of the road and jumped in front of the car. In which case, it's not the car's fault and it's not the guy's fault back at the bar. It's her fault. So the idea that they charged the man back at the bar with the crime, to me, is an overreach. But there's no reference here as to what happened with those charges. I suspect the charges were dropped. And so the man's complaint is that I got in a fight or an argument with my wife. She was drunk. She left the bar on foot because he says he didn't toss her keys. And then I hear later she got hit by a car and I get arrested and they berate me and yell at me and charge me with some form of manslaughter. I didn't hit her with the car. Someone else did. So I understand his consternation at this. I'm not sure how far this is going to go because if the charges were dropped, then really his complaint is I was charged with something and the charges were dropped. And that's exactly what should happen if bogus charges are filed against you. Can you sue them for that? We'll see. We'll see. But remember, the police, when they make an arrest, fill out a police report. And quite often that police report is reviewed by somebody and then sent to the prosecutor. The prosecutor looks at it and goes, can we file charges? Is there enough here to file charges? So I'm not 100% certain if that happened. because sometimes these stories get spun a little bit. It might be they arrested him and said, you've been arrested on suspicion of manslaughter, and that the charges never stuck, that they never actually got filed or something like that. We don't know. We don't know. But underlying the lawsuit is the crazier concept that the man was charged for his wife's death after he stopped her driving drunk and she was hit by a car. And by the way, remember, that's not his version. That's their version. His version was, I was arguing with her out in the parking lot and she just walked home. I didn't take her keys. And if his version is correct, it's an even crazier case that he got charged with manslaughter at all. So stories from the UK Independent. Gino Spoccia wrote it. Quite a few people sent it. Thanks a lot. Questions or comments below. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Minimalism is the intentional promotion of the things we most value and the removal of anything that distracts us from it.